Your Windows 95, she hissed, smiling for the others. I laughed. I thought it was a joke. You know, one of those backhanded digs during all hands where everyone nervously chuckles and moves on, until she followed it with, clock out. Forever. My name is Vincent Carr. I'm 54 years old, and until exactly 11:18 a.m. that Monday morning, I was Senior Operations Architect at Full Tech Logistics. 25 years of my life. I built the backbone of our fulfillment systems, the automated routing, the emergency reroute matrix, even the internal dashboard our execs used to monitor shipments. When newer hires asked where the codebase came from, someone would point to me and say, "That's the guy who wrote the bones." And the woman who fired me? I recruited her myself. Madeline Gentry, MBA from Northwestern. Background in transformational leadership. I first met her 3 years ago when she was freelancing for a supply chain startup we absorbed. She was sharp. I'll give her that. Fast-talking, big-picture thinker. Knew how to package a PowerPoint and kill in meetings. I endorsed her transfer to our strategic innovation team, 2 promotions later, and now she's our new director of global operations. And apparently, she thinks I'm an obsolete operating system. The room had gone quiet after she said it. A few heads turned my way, unsure whether to laugh, protest, or just stay the hell out of it. I looked around the table, people I'd mentored, led through 2 company-wide overhauls, disaster-tested during the great Q4 crash of 2017. No one said a word. I felt my pulse rise but kept my voice flat. "Excuse me?" She leaned in, still smiling, eyes cold. "You've been invaluable, Vin. But we're shifting into a leaner, more dynamic phase. What we need now are systems that can evolve people who can evolve. You've done good work, but it's time to make room for what's next." I wanted to ask her what the hell she thought. I'd been doing for 25 years, holding meetings. I'd spent weekends in server rooms, rebuilt entire warehouse workflows from scratch, patched live code while drinking bad gas station coffee at 3 a.m. I'd seen what's next every year and outlived most of it, but I didn't say anything. I just nodded slowly, took off my badge, placed it on the table, and stood up. "Don't you want to?" she started. Maybe to smooth it over, or maybe to make sure I didn't cause a scene. But I was already walking. The elevator ride down from the 26th floor felt like it took an hour. I watched the numbers tick down like countdown timers. I expected the anger to hit, or shame, or something. But all I felt was clarity. An eerie, focused silence in my brain, like the moments just before a storm breaks. By the time I reached the parking garage, my phone buzzed. One new message from Evan, my former tech lead. All it said was, "What the fuck, roommate?" That's when I learned she'd handed my role, my actual infrastructure keys, to her roommate. New hire. 6 weeks in. No previous logistics experience. 0 training in our architecture. But she'd been sitting in on our meetings, learning fast. Madeline had called her a breath of fresh air in a staff email that morning. Fresh air? Sure. Try rewiring a multi-million-dollar fulfillment pipeline with YouTube tutorials and startup energy. Still, I didn't reply to Evan. I just stared at the screen and replayed her words again. Your Windows 95. Like I'd been frozen in time. Stuck. Outpaced. Funny thing is, that old OS, it ran quietly, dependably, until people got flashy and forgot it was doing all the heavy lifting under the hood. I started my car and pulled out of the garage without looking back. This wasn't a crash. It was an ignition, and 48 hours later, she would learn exactly how combustible the system still was. The call came in at 6:12 a.m., 2 days after I handed in my badge. I was still lying in bed, watching light creep across the ceiling, trying to decide if I should go make coffee or just stare at the wall a little longer. It was Marcus, one of the few people left at Full Tech I still trusted. "Vin, your replacement just brought the whole line down." I sat up slowly. "What do you mean down?" "I mean down. Incoming shipments misrouted. Someone flipped the priority queue backward. Pallets meant for Chicago are en route to Reno. Inventory tracking's a disaster. Customer service is catching fire. I closed my eyes and exhaled. Jesus. They tried to hotfix the routing protocol and killed the legacy integration. Your entire back-end decision tree? Gone. I didn't respond right away. My brain was already building the flowchart in real time, visualizing the cascade failure from one bad overwrite. I had color-coded those flows 3 years ago. Blue for routing, red for emergency interrupt, yellow for capacity bleed. I could still draw it from memory. Marcus hesitated. Finn, they're saying you deleted it before you left. I froze. They sent out a company-wide email this morning. Said you made unauthorized back-end alterations that compromised system stability. Legal's looking into it. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Did I even have access after deactivation? Your credentials were cloned. The activity shows under your ID. I didn't say it out loud, but I knew exactly what happened. I didn't touch the system, but I know who did, and she logged in using my old credentials. Madeline. That same morning, I sent a polite, neutral request to Full-Tech's IT team. Former employee seeking access logs for personal records. No legal threats, no drama, just curiosity. They sent me a zip file an hour later. No encryption, no explanation. Just a folder named VCAR, deactivation dump. Inside was a list of logins, timestamped actions, a few archived emails. Then, something else, something they clearly hadn't meant to include. It was another folder, nested deep inside an admin tree labeled Priv Archive. Last modified 2 days before I was terminated, password protected, but I knew the company's naming conventions. Took me 6 tries to guess it, and then it opened. Inside were documents flagged with red metadata tags, audit risk, internal only. There were half a dozen spreadsheets tracking system stability, each one worse than the last. 3 flagged alerts from the compliance team about unresolved routing bugs that had been closed without resolution. But what made my throat go dry was a Word doc titled, Exit Plan V3 Roommate Build. I opened it. 3 pages of internal transition notes. Authored by Madeline Gentry. The file was time-stamped a full week before our strategy meeting. It outlined a plan to sunset my position, reassign my responsibilities, and shift all critical systems access to a new team lead identified in parentheses only as RMG. Roommate. Gentry. In the implementation notes she wrote, VCAR's redundancy is built on tribal knowledge. Recommend full credential capture prior to separation. Assign RMG to sandbox environment using mirrored credentials. Eliminate car position post-migration to maintain optics. I scrolled down, heart pounding. She had even attached a flowchart of anticipated failure scenarios post-separation, not if things broke when. Her plan accounted for fallout, but instead of preventing it, she'd built a wall to deflect blame. That's why she smiled when she fired me. She'd already handed me the match, just needed to wait for the fire to catch. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the screen. She hadn't underestimated my systems, she'd weaponized them. And now, with the line in flames, the blame pointed directly at me. And my pension in jeopardy. I had a choice to make. Do I clear my name quietly? This folder and pull the whole building down with it? I decrypted the file around midnight. Couldn't sleep. The lines between work, revenge, and survival were blurring too fast, and my body hadn't caught up with the fact I no longer had a job to wake up for. I sat in the glow of the monitor while the encryption cracked open like a rotten egg, spilling everything Madeline thought she'd buried beneath admin folders and password tricks. The first thing I found was a name I didn't expect to see in HR's restricted notes. Gentry, roommate, Sarah T. 2 background checks, 2 failures, both times flagged for falsified academic credentials. She claimed a systems engineering degree from Drexel University, never attended. The HR notes were blunt. Candidate misrepresented qualifications. Do not hire. Risk. High. What followed was worse. A system override with Madeline's employee ID. Manual bypass. No explanation. Just a 3-word note entered at 9:42 p.m. on a Saturday. Override for pilot. There was also an email. Internal only. No greeting. No signature. Just, make sure none of this touches payroll or legal. Sandbox credentials only. Keep eyes off central access logs until migration is finalized. I stared at that line for a long time. Keep eyes off. That's what this all was about. I wasn't outdated, I was a liability. I remembered the all hands last year when upper legal asked for a compliance audit. Every department was expected to submit code documentation, vendor agreements, audit trails. I compiled ours over a weekend. Over 1,200 lines of back-end annotations, attached receipts from third-party vendors, fixed 6 bugs while I was at it. The general counsel said we were the only team to hit the deadline. The next day, they gave me a coffee mug that said, "Hero." Now I was the scapegoat. I forwarded the decrypted file to a private drive and called the one person I knew still had claws inside Fulltech's upper echelons, Stephen H. We'd worked side by side on 2 crisis teams before he moved into compliance. He answered on the second ring, voice still hoarse from sleep. "I need to show you something." I said, "It's bad." We met the next morning in a corner booth of a diner we used to hit during night shifts. Nothing had changed. Same sticky menus. Same burnt coffee. I handed him my phone and let him scroll in silence. He barely blinked as he read. When he finished, he slid the phone back. "They needed you gone to bury the audit," he said. "This isn't just a scapegoat play. It's a CYA operation. They replaced a career system engineer with an unqualified placeholder to gain control of your build, because the original didn't leave them room to cheat. You think she planned it from the start?" He nodded slowly. Soon as legal started sniffing. "You were a problem. Not because you broke things, but because you never did." I rubbed my jaw and looked out the window. "So what now? Go public? Burn it all down?" He leaned in, lowered his voice. "If you go loud, you'll lose control. Media will twist it. Company will spin it. But if you want to make sure they never forget what they did..." He opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick white folder. It had no label on the front, just a code, 409B. "Whistleblower clause," he said. "Federal protections, internal arbitration trigger, corporate audit lockdown. If what you've got is real, and it is, we don't just expose them." He slid the folder across the table. "We go nuclear." I invoked 409B just after noon on a Thursday. Stephen handled the paperwork. Anonymous protection, federal whistleblower shield, internal audit lockout. No traceable fingerprints, no name on the front page. But they'd know it was me. I didn't care anymore. I uploaded everything. Every document, every log file, every screen grab. A neat little archive named Legacy Risk Payload, zip. Inside, her, override history, manual credential cloning, and 2 versions of Sarah T's resume. One submitted to HR, one she used on LinkedIn. Entire degree fabricated. References from a defunct company in Seattle. Metadata logs showed the edits to her file came directly from Madeline's account. The patch she blamed on me, the one she said broke the back end and crippled the fulfillment line. Time-stamped exactly 2:17 p.m. 2 hours and 23 minutes after I'd clocked out for the last time. I didn't just upload the receipts, I categorized them. I highlighted decision points, layered comments, flagged risk indicators. I knew how Fulltech's compliance team operated because I helped build their first response tree back in 2011. What I sent wasn't a bomb. It was a map through the ruins with the arsonist circled in red ink. By Friday morning, corporate PR began damage control. No names mentioned. No admission of fault. Technical misalignment. Legacy systems under review. No individual responsible. They were hoping it would slide under the rug with jargon and carefully placed modifiers. But Stephen had already done the next thing we agreed on. He passed the folder to a journalist. Finance Beat. Regional publication. The kind of outlet that doesn't make national waves until someone tosses in a stone this big. Headline hit at 8:13 a.m. Director promotes roommate. Fires 25-year vet. Blames him for system crash. The piece was tight. Brutal. Professional photos of me at a company retreat, smiling next to execs. Side-by-side screenshots of Sarah's resumes. System diagrams labeled, auth, override, detected. A quote from a former senior architect, anonymous, of course calling the incident a catastrophic failure of ethics, disguised as innovation. By noon, it was viral. By evening, it was everywhere. Madeline released a statement through full-text media team. 3 minutes, shot in her office, staged with a houseplant, and branded mugs in the background. Her voice trembled at the right points. She used phrases like grief over misunderstanding and respect for those who served the company. Said she was never fully informed about the risk profile Vincent left behind. But her hands betrayed her, kept ringing, shaking, gripping the arms of her chair like the words didn't quite land the way she rehearsed them. Unfortunately for her, the audit logs told a cleaner story. That patch she denied authorizing, she'd greenlit it on Slack 2 days prior. There was even a screenshot. Her exact message: fast track Sarah's sandbox access. We'll clean up later. Don't ping legal. I watched the clip of her statement while sipping coffee from the same mug they gave me the year we passed $5 billion in shipment value. Hero. All caps. Black font fading. By the end of the weekend, the hashtags were circulating. Number roommate gate. Number override scandal. Number Vincent didn't crash it. Then came the call. Private number. I answered. A voice I didn't recognize said, Mr. Carr, the board is convening a closed session Monday. You're invited to speak. They didn't have to say why. They knew exactly what this was about. One microphone. And this time, I wasn't coming in quiet. The boardroom was cold, clinical, and too quiet. 12 directors sat in a U formation around a polished black table, eyes locked on me as I stepped inside. There was a single chair in the center, flanked by a projector screen and a glass pitcher of untouched water. I walked in with a thumb drive, a leather folder, and not a single drop of emotion left to wring out. Madeline was already seated to the right, in a navy pantsuit that probably cost more than my first car. Her posture was perfect, hands folded neatly on the table, but her eyes didn't meet mine. Sarah wasn't in the room. She wouldn't be needed. The chairman nodded at me. Mr. Carr, you may proceed. I didn't waste time. I plugged in the drive, opened the file. Marked, sequenced, evidence, final, PPTX, and clicked to the first slide. 25 years. I began. That's how long I served this company. Built core systems from the ground up, trained 4 VPs, survived 3 mergers, and stabilized the line during the worst freeze in supply chain history. No one blinked. But 3 weeks ago, I was fired with the explanation that I was no longer aligned with the company's future. Within 48 hours, the routing system collapsed. I was blamed. Today, I'll show you why. I clicked through the next few slides: system logs, admin-level credential overrides, Slack messages timestamped to Madeline's user ID authorizing full access for Sarah T. I showed the email from HR, buried in internal storage, that flagged Sarah's resume as falsified. Twice, I pulled up a wire transfer from a full-tech shadow budget account, routed directly to a newly registered consultancy. Under Sarah's name, 6 figures for infrastructure advising. No deliverables. No contract. I clicked again. This slide, I said, pointing to a collapsed bullet list, contains the internal audit report Madeline received 2 weeks before my termination. It outlined growing instability in the sandbox environment. Her response was to delete the escalation path, reroute credentials through my legacy access, and install an unqualified person to avoid scrutiny. The losses? $4.3 million and still climbing. I had receipts for that too. Madeline finally spoke. This is character assassination. He's a disgruntled ex-employee twisting routine decisions into conspiracies. One of the directors, sharp suit, gray hair, CFO badge on his nameplate, held up a hand. We've seen the logs. She stopped talking. The room went still for a moment longer. Then the chairman closed his laptop. Miss Gentry, he said quietly, This board finds your actions to be in direct violation of ethical compliance and fiduciary standards. Effective immediately, you are terminated with cause. Her breath hitched, but she stayed seated. No severance. Your activity will be referred to federal authorities for investigation into fraud and credential falsification. She didn't move, didn't argue, just stared straight ahead like maybe this was all a bad dream that would evaporate if she didn't blink. HR has also completed its verification of Miss T's records, the chairman added. Her employment is revoked retroactively. She will be blacklisted from all full-tech affiliate firms and flagged in the industry database. I exhaled. Not a triumphant breath, just release. One of the directors turned to me. Mr. Carr, we owe you more than an apology. Your pension has been fully restored, and we'd like to offer you a retainer as a senior consultant to help rebuild what's been broken. I shook my head once. Some systems, I said, aren't worth restoring. Silence again. This time, it didn't feel hostile, just final. I gathered my folder, removed the thumb drive, and walked to the door. 3 weeks ago, I walked out of a department meeting stripped of my title, my access, and my dignity. Today, I walked out of the boardroom with none of those things reclaimed, because I didn't need them. This time, I didn't hand in a lanyard. I left behind a crater,